Can everyone hear me okay? Just like to check. We are celebrating today. We're remembering today for Calvary our remembrance, our commemoration of the Feast of All Saints, when we remember and acknowledge and honor and give thanks for all of our loved ones who have died and gone home to the Lord's embrace. And this year we take special time to remember all of those in our community at large who have died over the last year and a half, while, as by necessity, we were kept apart and weren't given the opportunity to mourn together. For me, these last 18 months of the pandemic were marked by my grandmother's death. She died in February of 2020. I flew out for the funeral. I came back the day afterwards, and as I was preparing for Sunday worship that coming week, I got the call from the bishop saying that we would be closed down, if you all remember, for 2 weeks to get the curve flattened. And the 18 months that have followed for me have been like an earthquake, and I know some of you experienced it the same way. All of the hardship and uncertainty of our isolation and our distance, the fear and dread of the pandemic, the loss of so many who have lost their health and their lives to this disease. Coming into that summer, we saw the murder of so many holy innocents at the hands of the police and the protests that followed. We lived through one of the most contentious and divisive elections that any of us could remember. We saw an insurrection at our capital that was trying to seize the seat of power. We felt the economic consequences, the loss of jobs, and our ongoing question of when, at what point, will we be getting back to normal? It has been an earthquake of an 18 months. And speaking personally during all that time, I've been really grateful for the ways we've been able to continue to gather and pray together and hear one another's voices. But if I'm really honest, there's one voice in particular that I was longing to hear, and it was the voice of my grandmother. During this uncertain and uncomfortable time, I was aching to hear her words of wisdom, of comfort and encouragement to help me make sense of what was happening. And if I were a betting man and I was willing to put money on it, I would put dollars on the fact that every single one of you has a voice like that, someone that you would give almost anything to be able to speak to one more time. We've all felt that pain of loss. But to be very honest with you, this last year and a half, I have felt something that I have never felt in this way before. I have felt, not just thought or believed, but felt the certainty of my grandmother's presence with me. In my moments of silent prayer, I could feel her presence. I could feel her love. And when I listened in silence, I could hear her offering me words of comfort and wisdom in the memory of all the things she had taught me through the years. And as much as I'm going to guess and would put money on the fact that all of you know that pain of loss, I am praying and hoping that you have all felt that consolation as well. The presence of our dear and departed and dead loved ones who walk with us still. I'm coming right around the corner to having walked with Calvary for 10 years. This February will be 10 years that I have been your pastor. And that time has been, for me, a time of great education, I would say more than anything else, that I have learned ways of walking with God, of knowing and proclaiming and living our faith for which I was lacking. And I could give you thousands of examples, but I want to give you just one that seemed really pertinent today. The very first funeral that I celebrated here at Calvary, the funeral for Teresa Kanjar. I had been here maybe 3 weeks. First funeral, and all I remember from it, because I was scrambling to make sure that I didn't mess anything up and make a fool of myself in front of you. So a young woman, a member of her family, stood up, took that podium there, and said a set of words which I had never heard before, but I have heard many times since. She said, "Today, she becomes an ancestor." And I've heard that many times before, and I will tell you, I've never heard it anywhere outside the black church. But that phrase at the time struck me as such an odd thing to say. But I've come to really appreciate it and the wisdom and the insight, because what's proclaimed there is not just the truth, which you can find proclaimed in any Christian church, right? That the dead still live again in Christ. But this proclamation that they also continue in relationship with us. That when they walk beyond that veil, that they step into the next moment, the next stage of their faith and relationship and walk with us, that we remain one community together. It is a way of proclaiming that truth that we uphold on All Saints' Day, that in Christ, in the resurrection that God offers, we remain one family, one communion, one community, one body together, the living and the dead alike. That walking with Christ, they still walk with us, they still encourage us. The memory of their lives and their words and prayers spoken today persevere. We proclaim in this assertion that they have become ancestors now, that they are still with us. We proclaim that God's love does not abandon us, and the love of our dead ones, our ancestors, does not abandon us either, that they still encourage us today. And as much as I feel the pain of loss, and I think you all do as well, it is also a cause for great celebration and joy. And we're going to right now take a moment to observe and give thanks for all of our saints, our ancestors, our loved ones who have gone before and walk with us still. And so I want to encourage you now to stand up, and we're going to try and make a large circle around the edge of the sanctuary. Hopefully, if all went well, the vergers will have provided you each with a candle. And we're going to do our best to maintain ourselves distant, socially distant.